everybody. This is June 7th, Friday, and we have a whole bunch of people here.
Morning.
Including our speaker, Uncle Pete. Go for it. Oh, it's live. Welcome.
The only one that isn't awake here is Arnold.
I've been up all
yeah,
night.
but he has an excuse. All right. So this morning, we're going to depart from the normal Uncle Pete's Corner a little bit. Normally, I'm showing you specific code, and we're stepping through code. Today, I'm going to kind of borrow a little more of a page out of Glenn's book, where the last few times he's shown you just conceptually some of the things that are possible. Well, that's kind of what we're going to do today, specifically with the file manager classes that Andy has. One of the first things that folks start saying when they start looking at the classes is, well, why would I want to use that? I can do the same thing with hmodify and hfilter. And, some of us may have said stuff like, I can do that with a SQL statement. And, so, but as you start really pushing the limits, you start finding some really cool things that you can do with the classes once you have them in place. So it's the classes themselves help you do certain things and streamline your app and really help when you start doing web services and things like that, which Andy's going to show you after I get done. But all of that is kind of just the foundation. Once you have that foundation, then you can use those same classes to do some really cool stuff that would have been really hard to do any other way, especially without serious performance hits. And that's kind of some of the conceptual stuff I'm going to show you today is some of the, more advanced things that we're doing built on top of the classes. This is a web app that Andy and I are working on for someone that we have definitely taken it to the next level of class use.
And one interjection on this. One of the things there's two things that happen on the web. Every time you go access data, you have a lot of refresh, either AJAX refreshes or the page refreshes. You also are doing a lot of communication back and forth to the database. If you're just displaying data, this is where the classes come in really, really handy. Okay? Go ahead, Pete. Sorry.
All right. So again, I'm just going to show you some conceptual things. Let's start with one that will interest a lot of folks. How many of us have struggled with combo boxes, especially in WebDev, returning a number instead of the value we want? I think at least once a week there's a post online, and Bob Roos has been the guy that has kind of taken that one and shown a lot of folks how to use G-Link and use G-Link with combo boxes. That stuff doesn't work quite as well on WebDev as it does WINDEV. But one of the things that I discovered very recently by pure accident is that I can have my combo box return a class. And let's take a look at that, because I know you're saying, okay, I recognize those words, but I'm not sure what he's trying to say. This combo box right here, carrier, content of that combo box is our class. And Andy has shown you this in several webinars. I've shown you some of them. This is his standard file manager class, nothing fancy about it at all. And that is the source of my browse. I'm displaying the carrier name, But the stored value is, instead of selecting an element like the ID, I'm returning the entire current element, which in this case, because we're using classes, means that I am returning the carrier record. So that means that when you select a combo box, the value of a combo box is actually going to be that entire record structure. So if we come over and look at our classes for carrier, that record class has all the fields for carrier, not just the field that we displayed, not just the ID, because I'm returning that record structure. I have everything available to me. And let's look at how I'm actually doing that. Do a quick search for that code in the code here. That was wrong box. My search criteria instead. Right, here we go. Okay, so this is my code that is saving out that screen that you just saw, this form. And we don't need to worry about, you know, this is some pretty hairy code doing a lot of stuff. But,
sounded like a simple example, Pete.
Yeah, exactly. I lost a little hair on this one. And again, that's the reason this is conceptual stuff, not code walkthroughs. But what I'm needing is I'm needing the carrier ID and down below some other information from carrier based on what they selected in that combo box. So all I have to do is declare an instance of the carrier record class, and then I set that record equals the combo box, because the combo box stored value is that current element of the carrier class. Then the carrier record is that current value. So this gets me rec, and now I can use rec carrier.
I don't have to look up in the database the ID and get the record.
Yeah, I can use carrier name. I can use any of the fields out of carrier are now available to me. I didn't have to deal with the 1, 2, 3, 4 that you normally get back from a WebDev combo. I didn't have to, like Andy said, take carrier ID if I managed to get that back from the combo and then go fetch the record and then use carrier name and so forth out of it. I'm able to just return the entire record structure straight from my combo box and use it. And loading that. Yeah, sure.
I have two reflections about that. Two first.
Can you turn up just a little, Fabrice? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Absolutely. Give me 1 second.
I don't hear him at all now.
Yeah, that seems to be down, not up
right now.
Yeah, if you unmute that, and then you should be able to slide bar when you drop it.
Well, go up to the top where your mic is and hit the down arrow, and then adjust mic, and you can slide that. So he must be, yeah. It mutes out when he's adjusted it.
Hello?
Oh, he's running through the wizard.
No.
There, much better.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, much better.
Okay.
Hi,
so I have Hello, everybody. I have two thoughts about that. First, it's clearly extremely powerful, and one aspect that you have to think about is that you are getting all the variable of the class, which means that you're not getting only the record, but you can get also all the internal flags as long as they're global. They're going to be available for you, so you will get the current in-memory status or any information about that you have in the class also available. So that is clearly extremely powerful. Now, the downside of that is that this data may be stale. And you have to realize that it's the data that has been copied in a class record in memory. So nothing says that the time you are setting the combo value into anything, this data is still the data that you have on the hard drive.
Correct.
So there's a very, very
If
good
you're worried
side
about
to that.
the data being stale, there is yeah.
You have to refresh.
Yeah, you're correct. There is a refresh capability inside the class that all you have to do is a rec refresh. If you're concerned, or if the data that you're pulling from that is you want to make sure it has the latest and greatest, that whatever changes have been done to it, then you can do that rec equals the combo, and then do a rec refresh, and then you know that you've got the latest version of
Andy,
that record.
can you when do you click
Yeah.
when do you when does the refresh hit? When you hit the down arrow on that?
No. Go back to your code there, Pete.
Yeah, well, when you build it is right here, Arnold. When I first load this screen, I'm fetching carrier, which is loading the carrier class with all the carriers. Now, carrier is a good example of something that you're probably using all over in your app, and you don't change carriers that often. You know, it's not every day you get a new trucking company. So that's something that you very likely may do this code to load that initial class over on your project code. And now when you first opened your project, you loaded up that class, and from that moment on, you never hit the database again to get it. Now, what we do, and from there on, everything I'm showing you is purely working within the arrays and the classes. Now, we do have, and that's what Andy was talking about, inside the classes, we have a mechanism that can, on a timer, go out there and say, hey, have any records changed? What do I need to refresh in the class? We also can force a refresh of the class, and that's what Andy was getting ready to show you. Let me find that code again. With this, with here, we could then do, was it rec refresh by ID, Andy?
Refresh by ID. Yeah, open paren, rec dot, and whatever the sysid is.
I think it's carrier.
So you can actually call that on the event that you drop the list, or okay.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If you want to force a refresh, but again, my whole purpose here was, I know they're not going to be changing carriers.
Yeah. So you have to be selective of which one you do that to.
Yeah. It really. If I'm picking a customer billing, then I'd probably force the refresh every time. If I'm doing something like the carrier or a lookup or something like that, I would set it up at the beginning and not mess with it again.
Like states of,
like
the state of United States or countries or something like that. You don't need to do it.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, they're all tools in your toolbox to use at the appropriate times. And then, like we said, we have another mechanism that we really haven't fully exploited and shown of a way for the class to actually, on a timer, keep itself refreshed in the background during that idle time while the user's standing there looking at the screen with a blank look on their face. At least that's the way my users are most of the time.
Ouch! I don't want to be one of your users.
The thing about the record class, or the record class, it holds all of the functionality, all the CRUD functionality is there, as well as properties, as well as any other elements, as Fabrice said.
And I'm going to be showing you some of that type stuff today also.
Yeah, I need examples.
But the important concept to understand here, and like I said, it was one that I discovered purely by accident. They don't, as far as I know, they don't really talk about it in the documentation or anything, is the fact that you can tell this, if you don't select a individual field and you leave it on current element, you get the entire record structure, your record class back.
Just neat as hell.
Yeah, so that just opens up a whole new world to you. Now that's a combo. You can also do that on a table. And I've got an example of that.
Would you do that as a normal course, or you be selective about that too? As far as choosing the current or just a specific?
I literally discovered this last week, and I don't think I've done a combo or a table since that. I'm not doing that. I don't know why I wouldn't want to do it, to be honest with you. No, I mean, you already have it loaded, so there's no, it's all memory. That's the beauty of dealing with classes, is at that point it's all memory. Now, like we've said, you gotta keep in mind whether or not you need to go force a refresh or not, but the data is still there and available to you.
It's the same thing as using a query, in fact, at that level.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so now here's a table. This is your typical lookup browse. This thing is called to select a consignee. Again, content is our consignee class, and I am returning that entire record structure as the result of the table. And then when you select one, all I'm doing, and now the beauty of this is an example. Let me go show you where this thing is being called. Let's pop up consignee.
I just realized that was a WebDev form, huh?
Yeah, this is all WebDev stuff I'm showing you. I don't know that I've ran WINDEV in the last 2 months. This is a prime example. This pop-up consignee is used in 3 or 4 places, and the data being used out of it is different everywhere. Sometimes I just need the ID. Sometimes I need the full name and address, like you're seeing here. Well, in the original code, it was calling a lookup. You would select consignee, which obviously at that point you've loaded all the data. You select a consignee, returns the ID, and then guess what the next thing you do when you get back to this code? Take that ID and go fetch the record again. Because now you need the specific data from that record. And of course, the table doesn't know what to return because, like I said, there was 3 or 4 screens calling it, needing different data. So the old style of programming would have been have half a dozen additional parameters that you're calling that thing with by address so that you could stuff whatever you needed back into it and yada, yada, yada. Instead, if you noticed the page close dialog, which just so you guys know, I don't know, how many of you have done a lot of WebDev or not, that is similar to result. It closes that page and returns whatever you're returning. So it's similar to the result rec. So you notice, I'm doing that same thing that we did over on the combo. I'm saying record is consignee record class, and then I'm setting it equal to that value from the table, which is whatever record has been selected, and then I am returning that entire record back over here from where it's called. So now all I have to do is say record is consignee record class, record equals page display dialog, and now when that returns, I have all the values, anything I need from that consignee table is available to me.
Damn, that's
So similar to the combo, but as you see here, I'm actually passing an entire class as a result of another procedure.
do you do any error checking on
Uh-oh,
this?
I think I broke them, Andy.
Did you?
Yeah.
Do you do any error checking on this?
What do you
like,
mean?
If you don't find something, or
that's what this is.
so.
If I don't get a consignee back, I don't do anything.
Oh, you don't say I can't. Okay. You just don't send anything back.
Right. Okay. You know, and again, you know, today's not about specific code. It's about conceptually. I want you guys to kind of start thinking about things that you can do with the classes that take you to that next level. You know, the classes are the building blocks. You know, and all I'm showing you here is how to put those building blocks together in different ways to accomplish different tasks.
Dan asked, can you bind the fields on the page to the class variables? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Show me how you do that, Pete. You declare the record at the top of the page. Pete, you want to go through that with them just real quick? You got
let
one?
me see. This is a form that, you know, don't get scared. We're not going to look at everything on this form. For the love of God, let's not look at everything on this form. But
Are you saying,
all we've got.
Are you saying that doing something like this is very difficult, or just time?
No, it's
no.
It's
just this form is.
This form is a monster.
Okay, because I want to know that I can do monster stuff.
You can do monster stuff, Arnold.
Don't worry, you don't even need to use classes to do monster
you.
stuff.
Yeah, no, you don't have to. They just, you know, it's just another tool in your toolbox. So instead of, normally you would see this job number linked to job in the analysis job number. In fact, when I originally got a hold of this, that's exactly how it was set up. All I've got instead is I've got it linked to job rec job number.
Job rec is the class.
I'll show you where that is. Job in the global decorations of the page, job rec is defined as job rec class, and then in the initialization of the page, we're doing job rec refresh by number. Job number, that's just a little bit different method that we created specifically for this one versus that refresh by ID that we showed you a little earlier. But all that's doing is saying, okay, here's my job rec instance. Get the data for this specific job. And if we go look at that code, this is more or less the code you guys would have written directly over in that window. You know, all it's doing is an hread seek first. Now it's doing some fancy stuff to move it into the class and doing some error handling and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's the same code that you would have written directly here. But now it's loaded into that class. And the cool thing about having it loaded into that class is, along with having it bound to the screen, wrong, this has a few pop-ups on it too. Along with it being bound to the screen, and this is something else I'm going to show you a little while, I am passing that job record class over to other pages when I call them. And that's something else we're going to look at later on. But that's another advantage to having it loaded into that class, is now I've got it in a container that I can pass off wherever I need to. That's not quite as easy to do with a record structure. You start trying to use a shared record structure, sooner or later you're going to have some code somewhere that's going to step on that record structure and cause you issues. Where with the classes, they're a contained memory component that is very easy to hand around. Okay, any other questions, or are we ready to go on to the next example?
I'm ready.
You ready?
I have a question. Do you like all these fields that you go to the description and you link to it? Is there a way to link it by code rather than through the IDE?
Yeah, with the H-link you can, but I don't know why you would want to be honest with you, unless you're changing them on the fly.
Okay. Thanks.
Now, what you can do is when you first create your screen, Andy's shown you before where you can drag them out of the analysis. You can also drag them out of your class, and that will create those links for you on the fly. So, there's some shortcuts to get there.
Okay, cool. That helps.
All right, let me close some of this stuff so I can find where I'm at. Okay, the next thing we're going to show you is not necessarily so much the classes, other than the fact that we get a benefit from the very fact that classes are under the covers just really fancy arrays. So the advantage to that is that we can use array functions to do cool things with them. So let's take a look at the Bindery page. Okay, this page and this one, let me run you an example of what we're going to do here. Yes, and we always do our demos in production. It's a long story. Some of these page refreshes that you're seeing that are taking 2 or 3 seconds, it's not data access, it's looper rendering. And that's one of the things that I'm hoping real soon we're going to get to push this app into 18 and see what happens. There are some performance issues with looper rendering in 17 when you get into really big loopers. Okay, so this is our Bindery page. And one of the things that we can do is we can come in here and we can create a lot. And when we click on it, what it does is bring up these finishing operations. And we can say we want to do this to it, we want to do that to it. Now, the user has the ability to say, well, he needs to do that operation first. Then he needs to do that operation last. So these up and down buttons allow him to select how these operations are managed. That's a prime example of something that was a royal pain in the butt in the language many of us came from. I will now show you the code behind the up and down button. Drum roll, please. Array move. All I do is I find whatever element they have selected. That's what table select. Well, first of all, I'm making sure that they've selected something. If they have, I find the index for the array they've selected. And as long as I find it, which, this is belt and suspender stuff, obviously I'm always going to find it. Then all I do is move it from where it is to one less. I'll move up. So all I'm doing is saying move this array element up one, everything else shifts down. Obviously, move down does just the opposite. So because all my data in that table is stored in an array, I can just use array move to move them around. And then that save button that you saw on the screen, when you press that, at that point, I just loop through the array in the order it is and save them into the database with a sequence number that matches that order that they're in the array. I don't have to do anything fancy with, back in the old days, I would have had to have that sequence on the table, and I would have had to go through and modify all the records every time you moved up or down to change the sequence to keep them in the right order and all that. I don't need to do that. I just count on the array order to manage my sequencing. So that's another example of, something that would have probably been a couple hundred lines of code is this code. Or stunned silence.
Yes.
No, I'm
Stunned
just
silence.
in shock.
We got glazed.
Baby, shock and awe.
Shock
Okay.
and awe, that's right.
Now let's get stupid with it. We were showing you baby stuff.
You were just dumbing it down?
Yeah, that was
that's the toddler stuff. That's the toddler stuff.
Remember this page? I mean, we still got our app running. Let's go take a look here. Let's go back to the job ticket. I'll give you a little background on this application. All this stuff down here, the gray boxes are forms, and then the entries under them are lots. That is all work that needs to be produced. And as you see, this thing goes on for a good bit. Every one of these forms, this gray box is a database record. Every one of these white lines, the lots, is a database record. When this thing opens up, it's loading on average somewhere around 200 lots, 30 forms, and a few miscellaneous extra records. And this screen allows them to add lots, add forms, delete lots and forms, change their data, what have you. Then, when they're done with all that, they go to what's called the Bindery page. Which now is taking those same lots. Here's those lots that we saw over there, form 1 lot A10, and allows us to package them together, do some shipping on them, combine them into kits, do all kinds of other crazy stuff with them. Well, back in the old days, like before last week, this screen, when it ran, the first thing it had to do was go read all those records that you just created in the job ticket page. It had to load all those back up into memory so that it could display them on this page. Well, now what I'm doing is this page is using two classes. Well, it's using a bunch of classes, but the two we're talking about are lot class and the form class. That's where that data on those two are stored, and then the job itself is stored in the job rec that we saw. So as you're adding lots and forms here, you're managing them through that lot class and that form class. So then, when you're all done and you go to the bindery page, all we do is hand the bindery page the job record class, the form class, and the lot class. And we come over to the bindery page, and it's accepting the job record class, the form class, and the lot class, and doing its stuff. No database access to get those records. That right there took a couple of hundred database reads out of what it takes to initially display this screen. And if you don't think
of data that was already in memory.
Exactly. If you don't think that was a performance increase, you should run the old page. We don't have time in this webinar to run the old page.
The bigger the job was, the longer that page would take to run. And the problem with it is that the only thing you're doing is redisplaying in a different manner the same data.
Exactly.
And allow them to do other things to it. So it was silly to go out there and do the database reads again for no reason, and by passing the classes, it's already in memory, and all you're doing is rendering the page based upon the data you have.
So that's another example of passing stuff around. We have a similar one right here with the plus S. This is a lot. Now we want to actually do some shipping of that lot. Well, this is a completely separate page because it is called from several different places. Well, all we do now is we pass it that lot class, let you do whatever you want with it, and then when we come back, you'll notice how some of these are red. That means that you don't have a shipment for that one yet. If I come in here and add a shipment, I think I need a ship date. I think that's all I need. No, I need a due date. All right, and then when I close this, that plus S is now gray. And I'm going to show you how we did that without any additional logic in our app at all when we get
now, do you understand that what he did with that shipping, it did go to the database. It is saved in the database. It's not just in the array.
Right.
Okay. So, what he did was he entered the record and did a rec save on it out of that class. And the rec save stored it in the database and stored it in the array at the same time.
Right. And because I passed the class from here over there, the classes that are on this page now know about that extra record without having to go say, hey, did he change anything over on that other page? Because I shared that class between the two pages. This page is now aware of the changes that were made on the other page, which is how this plus S went to gray. And we'll look at that code. Let's go ahead and look at that code now while we're talking about it. This is a looper, and there's a few elements on the looper. Here we go. That button S, the font color, and the background color, they're all attributes, and they're linked to some class variables called button S background, button F color, button F bold. Okay,
which are properties over there in the class.
If we come over and look at the class, and that is the virtual lot class. Yeah. We see that those are properties. And if we look at the property, we see that anytime you retrieve button F background, properties are a very cool thing. You reference them like you do a variable, but they're really kind of a function. So when you reference it as a variable, it performs a function and returns the result to you. So all I do in my code is reference button F background. Anytime I do, it performs this function. And this function says, go look at that finishing array. And I'm looking at the F. I should be looking at the S. Go look at the shipment array. If there's a record in the shipment array, set the color of the background to this. Otherwise, set the background of that button to this. So that's how we're flipping that button from gray to red based on whether or not you have shipments. But you will not find any logic in this page to do that at all. When I came back from +S, the only thing I did was redisplay my looper. Because when I redisplay that looper, it's going to go reference that class property. That class property is now going to see that there's a shipment, so it's going to return a different result. My button turned gray. Normally what we would have had to do in the code is after we got back from the +S, we would have had to query, say, hey, did he add a shipment? If he added a shipment, then turn the button off.
Looper add line, looper add line, looper add line.
Exactly. But, silly me, I kind of like this code a wee bit better. Now, how we did that was a couple of tricks. Like I said, we passed that shipment class over to that screen that popped up with that +S so that it used that shipment class to add its records and manage itself, so that when I got back here, the shipment class had the new values in it. But the other thing we did is, if we look at this virtual lot record class, it contains the shipment class. So now, you've seen me passing classes to other procedures in Windows. Now I am telling one class about another class.
Dan, I hear head explode.
Dan, climb down off the desk, untie the noose. I swear we'll get you through this.
Fabrice, did you try to pass object as parameters on an AWP page?
I haven't done a lot of AWP stuff, Fabrice. So I'm looking. I'm looking for you to.
But it won't work.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I'm looking for you to kind of help us. I know you've done more AWP stuff, so I'm hoping you're going to be able to enlighten us a little on that.
Yeah. I'm certainly going to try this on AWP, but I have a strong suspicion that it will work only in the classic mode, which is basically an emulation of a WINDEV program. So that will work in WINDEV, in WebDev Classic, but AWP as each page is completely independent. I don't see how they could pass a class object from one to the other. I'll try just to be sure, but I don't think so.
Yeah, definitely try and let us know. And then I know you can also, set contacts to, more or less add it. But, even if you do that, then it's, you kind of defeating the whole purpose of what AWP is in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I'm not using
that'll
that.
definitely
I'm
be
using my own.
Right. So yeah, that'll definitely be something that will be worth looking and hearing about. So anyway, let me talk a little more about, we told this class, this is our virtual lot record class, that it has the finishing class inside it. And notice the word dynamic. The word dynamic is very important. The word dynamic should be cool, because that's cool. And the reason for that is, and the easiest way to explain it is, dynamic lets it share the same memory space. So we're not creating a new instance of the finishing class. It's the same instance of the finishing class. So anything that happens to the finishing class somewhere else, I'll see in here. Anything I do in here, it'll see on the other side. They're the same entity. So if we come back over to our Bindery page, we'll see I defined the virtual lot class. Then I defined my finishing class, my shipment class. And then these 3 lines of code right here is where I'm saying, okay, now the virtual lot class, its finishing equals this finishing class. Its shipment equals this shipment class. Its lot equals that lot class. So now, by doing that, I have tied the finishing class I defined in here to the finishing class I defined in virtual lot. Now, the cool thing about this, and this shows you how that dynamic thing works, is if you see here at this point, the finishing class has no records in it. The shipment class has no records in it. I haven't loaded anything. When I get down here, I load that finishing class. I load that shipment class. But do you see me doing anything to tell the virtual class, hey, those finishing classes have changed? I don't need to, because they were linked dynamically. As soon as I added something to that finishing class, that virtual class has that data available to it. And all of that is how that button just magically turned to gray once I added a shipment on that other screen. And I reiterate again, this was all for conceptual purposes, just to get your juices flowing. I don't expect you to be able to take this and be up and running
Dan,
tonight.
I'll expect you coding like this.
Are you going to
Yeah.
cover techniques like this in the Chatterbox?
This is a lot of the items that we're moving to Chatterbox. We're going to go a little bit more basic to start with, because I don't want to hear pops of people's heads exploding. And but yes, we're using basically the same techniques across the board. The web page will use the same techniques as we go through this. So you'll see how all of this stuff works together across the board, across all 3 platforms. And this is the idea behind using the classes to have a common code base across all 3 platforms, as far as it will allow you to do so. Okay? There's certain things that you may not be able to do depending upon which ones, which I'll show you some of that when I'm doing conditional compiles. But bottom line, we're using the same code base, the class code base, across all 3 platforms in order to accomplish what we're doing, and allowing us to primarily do interface work, because our base code is done. I mean, our base code is the same. He can finish all this up, and if they decide, we'd like to have a desktop version, well, okay, fine. I can take the same code across the board, make a desktop version of it, and with a few minor changes, I mean, literally not that many changes in the source code, because there's certain things you do on the web you don't do on desktop, we'd have the exact same program running.
Right. And our business logic of, like, I have another class property similar to what I just showed you with that +S for this delete button that makes that delete button invisible. based on other criteria. That's a class property. That's a prime example of that's business logic wrapped up inside that class that I don't have that coded in the interface. I have that coded in the class.
And that allows you not to have to repeat that business logic in more than one screen. If you have a larger application, a lot of times you're using the same file data in multiple screens. And sometimes you're allowing people to update it in multiple screens. When you do that, when you go down that path, your problem is that if you go change something to business logic in one screen, after a while, either new people on the job or something like that, for some reason it forgets it, or you don't remember it and don't get it in the other screen. We don't have that issue. This is true three-tiered architecture, and I never, over the years, and Pete's the same way, because Pete argued with me about this. He was the one that says, I could just write that in a SQL statement. Anyway, the thing may have. The thing about it is that I never quite understood why you would need three-tiered architecture until I got into this environment, where I'm wanting to use multiple interfaces with the same business rules and the same database. It used to be I'd put it all in the database because that was the one place that everybody had to access. Now I've moved a lot of that business logic into the classes. Now, we're not talking about referential integrity logic. That's two different things. Business logic is what I'm talking about. Moving those into classes allows the interface to be the best interface it can be for the environment you're shooting for. The business class takes care of the business rules, and then your referential integrity at the database takes care of the you can't delete this, you can't update this, that kind of thing, so you don't get orphans and everything else. Okay? And you really got to separate the three in your mind. RI, referential integrity, is for your database to keep you from screwing up your database and getting orphans and records and bad records and things like this. Business rules is how you run your business. That's what we put in the classes. Interface is whatever is presentation to the users. Three different things.
All right, couple more examples of different things that I'm doing with the classes. All right, we're back to that Bindery page. This looper here is that virtual lot class that we looked at. And this combo up here lets me look at shippable lots, inventory lots, or press lots. And there are a bunch of press lots, and you're seeing there, that's a prime example of that looper rendering performance I was talking about. Remembering this stuff is all 100% in the array, in memory, so there is no database performance involved at all, but you saw how long it took for that looper to render. And before I got to this, I kind of thought that there were some issues with just performance, period. But when I got here, I found out it's got to be the looper, because that's the only thing I'm doing is re-rendering the looper. So as you see, this combo switches, basically filters that list for me. Well, how would we do that in a normal application without the classes? We would have hfilter commands behind here, and we'd be churning that database every time you drop that combo down. Instead, what we have over in the virtual lot class, we have multiple arrays over here. The array rec is the big one. That has every one of those lots, regardless of their type in it. Then I have an array for the ones that are shippable, the ones that are WIP, the ones that are press lots, that as I'm adding records, I've got a little routine called split array that decides, oh, this array needs to go here based on this, it needs to go here based on that.
So you have each record
So
twice?
now I have, I'm sorry?
You have each record twice. One is the full array, and then one in each type of record?
Right, right. I'm managing them both in their individual filtered state, because we're doing a lot of things with them down below. And then I have the full one that is every one of them. And then the last array I have is array display. Now, if we come over and look at this page, real hard to grab that looper. There's a lot of hidden fields on it. The content of that looper is the display array. So whatever's in the display array is what this looper is going to show. And anytime you change the combo filter type, we just do another looper display. And if we look at the looper display code, all it does is set the display array, which is a class property, to the value of whatever's in your combo. So now if we come over and look at that property, and this is the opposite example of a property. Before, we were looking at a property that when we looked at what its value was, it ran a function. This one's just the opposite. When we set the value of that property, it runs a function. So anytime I assign a value to display array, it performs this function. And what it's doing is saying, oh, let's copy the shippable array into array display. And again, remember I said at the core, the way we've got these classes, they're just really fancy arrays that lets us do stuff like this. So all I have to do is say, move that shippable array into the display array, or move the whip array into the display array, or move the press lot array into the display array, and
move everything in there.
Yeah, or move everything in there. And so just by dropping this combo down, that sets a class property. Class property resets what's contained inside that array display, and my looper now displays new values.
Did you try to do the sorting only once when you fill the original array instead of doing it each time you display? A speed issue.
Oh, this sort down here, that's there because there's other things we're doing in other spots that are causing these arrays to get out of sort order.
Okay.
That's the reason I'm
issuing
this
maybe
sort here.
it would be faster to sort the array when you're filling them than to sort it each time you display, as you seem to have a problem there.
Yeah, but it's being affected elsewhere as well. It's being affected elsewhere, so you could have a different sort depending upon where you're at.
There's a lot of stuff going on with these buttons that cause the sort order to get out. So when we do this, we need to get it resorted in the order that they're expecting to see it here.
But you are correct, Fabrice. Under normal circumstances, if all you're doing is drop list display, then sort it before you get here. That way you don't have that array sort to execute every time for no reason. You're absolutely right on that.
Okay, that is multiple arrays for displaying. The last one I'm going to show you, and this one's kind of hard to show you. It's definitely more of a conceptual thing. Remember, this page has a lot of classes running. And this class is really based off of lots, but this remaining quantity field is not based off of lots. It's based off of what you've done with shippable lots and different things like that. And if you'll notice, when I select B12, and then I do quick create, and I get that message that I always forget to do. Oh, my VPN died.
Like you.
VPN died.
Oh, the VPN died? Yeah.
Hey, this is a great day. We got Fabrice here, and we got Jerome from PC Soft. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome, guys.
Jerome
Yeah.
from PC Soft. Well, hello,
Yeah, Ben was
Jerome.
telling me he was going to come. He showed up last week when we both phoned. Pete?
Oh.
he and Ben showed up, and we weren't there.
Oh. I just
Well, I'm
wanted
glad to
everyone
see
to know it was all Arnold's fault.
Hey, Pete, now that Jerome's here, maybe I should find that one deal that I know I'll be able to show that.
Jerome, if you go to the meeting menu on the top, or anybody that wants to talk, go to the meeting, then you'll see a audio setup wizard, and you walk through that wizard, and hopefully that will help you get through it. The thing that helps is to make your mic the default mic, not the computer mic, but the headset mic is the best.
Okay. Now back to this example. When I do this quick create, I select save close. If we go look, my B12 quantity remaining is now 0 because it created the lot down here. Now, the original version of this was a nasty select statement doing group bys and all kinds of stuff. And every time you did anything down here, it had to reissue that SQL statement to get all these remaining quantities right. Absolute performance nightmare. You know, basically, anytime you touched this screen, it was a good chance to go get a smoke break. Now, what I'm doing instead is, if we look at this, content of that table is actually called press lots. Even though that's the lot table, I've got a separate class called press lots. Well, what is press lots? Press lots, oh, must have moved it up in here, huh? Thought it was, there it is, bindery press lots, naming conventions. Okay, strap them on. Press lots is not your normal everyday class as if our regular classes are normal everyday classes. It is, all it is a manager of classes, if you can kind of get your head around that. What it's doing is taking the lot class, the shippable class, the form class, the virtual lot class, the finishing class, the shipment class, taking all those classes from over on that other page, and notice all these are defined as dynamic. Like I said, that's how I'm actually sharing the same memory space. It takes all those classes, and then it does this build array here that it steps through the lot class and looks up the shippable class to come up with how much has been taken out, and then it also goes and looks at the selected class, because the other thing that happens is as you move stuff over here, your quantity goes to 0. Otherwise, I would be able to go select that one again. So that's another instance of, this is purely in memory now, but my remaining quantity has been updated. You don't want to know how that was done in the old code. In fact, I'm not sure how it was done in the old code, and I had to rewrite it.
Hey, Pete, what?
So instead,
oh, sorry. Hey, Pete,
go ahead.
What memory is it hitting? The server memory or? Okay.
Server memory.
Yeah, it kind of depends. A lot of it is in your memory. Some of it's in the server. Most of what when you're dealing with classes, that's all server memory. So that is something else that to keep in mind is a lot of these techniques we're showing you. A lot of these techniques.
Here it's all in server memory because it's WebDev, so everything is on the server except for the display. Now, if you're working in WinDev, then the classes, the objects are on your local computer. So it really depends of what environment you're in. But on WebDev, everything that is server code is server. So.
Right, and that's what I'm showing you is appropriate for an app like we're showing you here, a business app, where I've got users running my business, and I don't have this isn't Amazon. I'm not going to have 500,000 people on this app banging away on it. If I had 500,000 people banging away on the app, I would go the AWP route and design totally different. In this app, if I need more users, that means my business is doing well, and I'll throw another server at it, because it's just throwing money at the issue. So, you have to think about how your app's going to be used, what resources. This app is using more server memory resources than an AWP app would mean. That means I cannot support as many users on a server as an AWP app would be able to support on the server, because I'm just going to simply run out of memory.
On this, Pete, that shared memory, is that shared between users, or is that my own memory for this session?
Your own memory.
So how do How do you deal with multiple users accessing this at the same time?
But don't.
They're all running in their own. That's what the session management is all about, and that's one of the beauties of WebDev Classic, or whatever you want to call it.
Saying is, when you're doing typical inventory, I came late, so you can knock me on the head if I'm going down a rabbit hole here. But if you have multiple users in a usual inventory control system, don't you want to update those numbers on the back end as soon as you have them?
Yeah, and that's an entirely different example than what we're talking about. This is managing a job, not inventory. Inventory would, you'd be wanting to update that database, and as we talked about earlier, that's an instance where you would want to refresh that class as you're getting it, because you want to know.
Yeah.
Not more than one person is going to be working on configuring and shipping this job at one time. So I don't have those.
In your situation, then using the arrays and your own memory works out for you, because you don't have to worry about anybody else fiddling with this.
Right. Yeah. Again, we have a bunch of tools in our toolbox, and we use the right tool at the right time.
Fine. All right. Thanks.
Yeah. Our biggest thing is that if we were doing that other, we would have. We still update the database. In other words, if he changes a record here and it actually is a change of record, he's still putting it to the database. I mean, it's not held in memory, so that way if you crash, you didn't lose everything. So if he changes a record or something that's in the database, it still gets updated. The difference is most of the manipulation for the interface to the client is done in memory and with the arrays in order to keep that as fast as possible. When you're Yeah, when you're talking about what you're trying to do, that's where your background process, and I'll show you that in the chatter box. The background process will go out there in a thread method and say, okay, is there any more? Do I need to refresh my deal, and do I need to add more data? I need to refresh, and do I need to add more data? So in the background, it's doing that refreshment of all the arrays while you're still sitting there running like a scalded ape, basically.
All right. Let me wrap up real quick so we can move on to Andy's.
Okay, cool.
As I said, you know, this is being managed by that press lot class, which is really all it does is know about every class that's on that page, more or less. And what happens is anytime you're changing those others and you need to redisplay that press lot class, all it does is recall this build array, which steps through those other arrays, does the summing off of a couple of different tables. You know, there's some different logic of whether it's added or not. All of that logic is right here in the array. And because I'm doing all this with arrays, it's very quick versus, you know, this same thing was being done across 5 tables with a giant select statement that even on a good server took 45 seconds to happen. Now, you know, it goes through this array in, you know, a couple of seconds, and, you know, there's a big difference between 45 seconds and a couple of seconds. So the only thing I want you to take from this example, you know, by all means, don't take this code. Take the fact that here's a class that all it does is you give it all your other classes, and then it's performing those summary functions, combining the records from those different classes to give you group bys, whatever you need to give additional information on the screen in a running total kind of format without having to do extra database work to make that happen. So that's my examples of some of the more advanced stuff that we've been able to do with classes by using the file manager classes as a foundation and building blocks to really do some neat and cool things. And the performance of this application versus where it was a week and a half ago is, you know, it performs unbelievably better. It's more stable. We don't get so many reports now. Before, we got a lot of reports of, well, you know, I did plus S and changed the shipment, but the total's not reflecting. You know, this here, when you'd move stuff across here, these totals would get all jacked up. You know, the code trying to keep track of that was insane. Now, because of the way it's doing it, you know, it literally is just taking all the records and adding them up. It can't be wrong. As long as you've got the records, it can't be wrong. So it's more stable. It's more programmer friendly as well as user friendly. And, you know, no offense, I like my users sort of kind of, but I'm more about programmer friendly. This thing is way more programmer friendly. I'd say safe estimate, we reduced the code on this page alone by 1/10 of the original code that was on this page when it was done in a more traditional linear approach.
Wait, you reduced it 10% or 90%?
90%.
90.
There's 10% of the code left.
That's impressive.
I mean, it's
Yes.
unbelievable.
Yeah. Stuart's question: why did you use the structures rather than staying consistent with classes? Classes have a lot of different things, like the properties, the functions, the things like that. And if all you need is the data itself, then you need to create the structure instead, Stuart.
He's probably talking about these couple of structures right here. Yeah, I could have made that a class, but just like Andy was saying, it's not a true. I'm not doing any record management or anything from it. I just need a group of data, and if you actually that press lot structure, you see is my array, and the whole purpose of that structure is that is this structure. And
So
the
that's
other
just
one
like
is
a
this
local.
structure.
So that's just a local.
And
Yeah,
I'll be
instead of
showing the
breaking
reason
it
why
out
we use
into
these
a
structures.
separate class, which in reality, in a very oversimplification, the record class is nothing but one of these. It's this on steroids. I don't need the steroid version here. I don't need the bulked up Arnold Schwarzenegger version here. So I just did the structure right inside the class.
I use Buddha classes myself.
Well, and mostly if you don't need to reuse it anywhere else, you don't need a class.
That's right. You're correct. You're correct. That's really it. And I'll show you a good reason why we separate and use some structures versus classes back and forth in the
So scope is
chatterbox
the main reason then.
as we see that. Partially transferring of data also is part of it, and I'll show you the reasons behind that.
I'm kind of beating a dead horse, but once again, we don't fall in love with your hammer. We've got a lot of tools in our toolbox.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah.
Okay. So
not saying this just because there's someone from PC Soft on or not, but I love the toolbox they gave us.
But you can tweak it, right? The tools.
Exactly. I may have added a few tools to the toolbox of my own.
Alrighty. So is there any other questions before
I'm done.
Before we shut down this webinar and start a new one for Andy? Okay. I'm going to stop the recording.